Hey guys, today I'm going to be updating my gear guide for rogues for phase 1. I guess this is kind of phase 1.5 since Dire Maul has come out. But since my last video and the release of Classic, a lot of things have changed. So not only are the new Dire Maul items in the game now, but the meta for rogues has changed as well now that it's confirmed that 6% hit is all you need to be soft capped and all your abilities to hit raid bosses. So that has changed how rogues are gearing up now. So now the best in slot is actually to run Shadowcraft, which was not the conventional approach, I guess, going in. And so I put together the Shadowcraft set and I've been testing it. And the big deal for me is it just procs a lot more than I thought it would. For me, it's procking about 4%. I don't have an add-on to track it. I've been just kind of noting when it procs and then going into a recount add-on to check how many attacks I've made. So no hard numbers here, but I would estimate it to be about 4%. And it procs a lot. And I noticed just doing a lot more damage. And it's really good. And so I was not expecting it to be that strong. So I would recommend you guys try and pick up the Shadowcraft set. The 4 set is underrated as well. 40 attack power is no joke. That's better than the Devil Sword set bonus. So, 40 attack power is, some people value hit differently. Some people believe it's 15 attack power is worth about 1% hit. Some people think like 20, but either way, the Shadowcraft 4 set is at least as good as the Devil Sword set bonus for the 4 set. And then the 6 set is amazing as well. So that's why Shadowcraft is the best option now. So that has changed just based on kind of the meta and how hit rating works. The other changes are going to be the Dire Maul items. So I'll just go through each one of them. Starting with the Tarnished Elven Ring. Now, these are really good. They're better than Painweaver Band and Blackstone Ring. And they're not unique. So you can run 2 of them. So you get these from the Dire Maul tribute runs, by the way. I don't know if they drop from anything else. I do not believe so. I think you have to do tribute runs to get these, but I could be wrong. That's what I did to get mine. So. And then that is actually all that changes come Dire Maul for the best in slot. However, there are a lot of good items that are nearly pre-raid best in slot. So the Royal Seal is really good. I actually equip it over the Black Hand's Breath when I'm in need of fire resistance. So for example, when I'm like fighting Rag, I put it in. And I want to mention the Bracers of the Eclipse as well. Now, these bracers are really, really good. Significantly better than the Shadowcraft bracers. So if you don't have the set bonus put together yet, the Bracers of the Eclipse are definitely going to be great to have in. So big addition from the last boss in Dire Maul West. And after that, the Mongoose boots are a very slight upgrade over the Shadowcraft boots. Again, if you don't have the set bonus going. 2 agility is, obviously not that big a deal. And then I also wanted to mention the Satyr bow. So, not worlds better than the other options. In fact, I believe Black Crow has the same stats. But there you have it for the Dire Maul updates for sword players. Now, the rest of the gear is going to stay relatively the same. I'm just going to go over what has changed. So I'll post the link in the description. You can go through all the gear, see what the best in slot is. That hasn't changed. So those are all the changes for swords. I did want to mention daggers as well. Now, one thing I didn't mention in my last video was the debuffs from some of these daggers. So Barman Shanker and Karis are great daggers if you're talking about damage and dungeons. However, in raid, these proc on bosses. And I can tell you at the very least, Barman Shanker, not only does it proc on a lot of bosses, it procs on some bosses you wouldn't even expect. So like I tried putting it in against Gar because he's an elemental, and it procced. So I quickly unequipped it. And if you guys don't know why I'm talking about the debuffs being so bad, you're in raid. You're only allowed to have 16 debuffs on a boss, and once you place the 17th debuff, it actually removes the first debuff from the boss. So it's really important that you're only putting good debuffs on the boss, and you're not, putting terrible debuffs like the Barman Shankers, 100 damage over 30 seconds. That's going to take up a whole slot. Obviously, like a corruption over a warlock is going to do like 10 times more damage. So that's why you don't want to have these bad debuffs. Also in PvP, they break all of your gouges and blinds. So I did want to mention, because I didn't mention in the last video, that these daggers are really only good for like questing and then, dungeons. That's pretty much it. So I still use the Barman Shanker quite a bit because, a lot of the time you spend at 60 is going to be in dungeons. But just keep in mind that these two daggers aren't quite as good as you'd think just looking at them. Now, another thing that has changed, Shadowfoot Stabber's in the game. I think it was originally released in late vanilla, so we did not know that it was even going to be in Classic. But the Shadowfoot Stabber exists, and it's a pretty good dagger. You can get it at 52, buy it on the auction house. It's going to be one of your best pre-raid options, considering for raid especially and PvP, considering that these two weapons apply, bad debuffs. The Spectre Blade, I think, is still impossible to get for Horde, but I think it's pretty tricky to farm on Alliance side too. Also, Heartseeker is really expensive, and obviously Fell Striker is really rare. So Shadowfoot Stabber is going to be the go-to for pre-raid until you can try and get your hands on some of the more difficult to obtain daggers. So that's a big change. Now for offhand, the Distracting Dagger, wow, what a dagger. This is going to change things significantly. A really, really good dagger. It's actually the best dagger if you need the weapon skill. So if you don't know how weapon skill works, basically when you have 300 weapon skill, you're like playing the game normally, right? You just leveled up your daggers. If you go to 305 weapon skill, so if you get like something that gives you +5 in your daggers, it's going to give you effectively 3% hit. The next 5% is going to give you like an extra 0.5% hit chance, but also it's going to give you an increased damage to your glancing attacks. In a glancing blow, you probably figure this out while you're leveling, but if you attack something that has a high defense, so higher skill level than you, a lot of your attacks will glance and do way less damage. Increasing your weapon skill reduces that damage penalty. So that got kind of complicated. Long story short, 310 weapon skill is really, really good. 315 weapon skill barely changes anything. So if you go from 310 to 315, you're going to get like another 0.5% hit and a very small increase in damage to the glancing damage. So you really are best going for 310 weapon skill and then stopping. 315, 320 is kind of useless. So long story short, for the Distracting Dagger is if you're at 305 or 300 weapon skill, it's best in slot. If you're at 310 dagger skill already, before you equip the Distracting Dagger, it's not going to be better than any of these three daggers. So just keep that in mind. Now, Mugger's Belt, it's the exact same explanation. Basically, if you need the plus weapon skill to hit 310 or 305, it's great. Otherwise, it's not good. Just keep in mind, though, it is going to be it's going to break your Shadowcraft. So if you really need, I would try and get the Distracting Dagger to get you to 310 rather than equipping Mugger's Belt and either breaking your Shadowcraft or your Devil's Oar. So that's it for pre-raid gear for phase 1.5. Obviously, raid gear has stayed the same. And thanks for watching, guys.